Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. And today we have an amazing guest. I mean, you have already seen this in the thumbnail, but we have Matthew with us. Hey, Matthew, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going really great. And it's been a long time since we did this.
Yeah, it's been a few years. I think the last time we had a video call, maybe 2019.
I think so. Yeah, 2019. It was long time back. But yeah, I'm glad to talk with you again after such a long time. And first of all, before we move ahead from this, I really want to congratulate you on your 400K subscribers at 40 videos. It's like a 4-4 thing, and you're doing such an amazing job. It's just
Thank you
beautiful.
so much.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, do you have anything to say, or do you want to introduce yourself in your way?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Matthew Encina. I've been a creative professional now for over 20 years. Have a pretty diverse background from print to motion to design, focusing in advertising and branding. And then the past few years have shifted towards content. Previously, the chief content officer at The Future, which is a creative education company, which I helped grow that channel to 1 million subscribers alongside Chris Do and the team. And now I make content on my channel, um, on YouTube, on Instagram, and also do a handful of other things these days, which include product design, consulting, and whatever thing is interesting to me at the moment.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think as we talked before, I don't want to question you the same things that you have already answered before. Like, how did you get in the
Mhm.
creative industry, and what was your background, and what interested you into getting this field, and your education with it, in this field in general. I'm sure you
Mhm.
have done a lot of podcasts and interviews about this. So, if you guys are interested in listening to all of that, make sure you just type in Matthew Encina on YouTube or all podcast platforms, and you'll find a lot of information about that. Stalk him, just stalk him. But today we just want to talk about something completely different, and pretty something that we have been following him around for 400 subscribers now. Let's start with the YouTube journey. We have seen you grow so much on YouTube, and I would love to understand how and where that idea came from, and what goes behind all of that scenes.
Yeah, I mean that's a big, broad question. Like, what do you really want to know?
Oh, I would love to know where that idea came from, like the in showing your productivity, building things.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, the focus of my channel is a lot of things. It's really my life through the lens of a designer, which is my profession, and that kind of takes form in a lot of things in terms of how I design my space, how I design my life, and then some of the work that I do. And I think a lot of that happened as a result of me wanting to do something for fun on the side outside of what I did as a day job. So when I started my channel, which was I started posting videos early 2019. I was still working as a creative director at Blind and working at the Future creating content there. So that was all education focused. That was all client service based. Those two types of work, and I did that during my 9 to 5. And as I was working at the Future on that channel, I learned a lot about the ins and outs of YouTube, how to use the platform, the audience that's on it. And I got to do all of my training through that channel, which was helpful. At a certain point around 2019, that's when I decided to start posting content on my own channel. I wanted to do something for fun. And at the same time, I was redesigning my home office, which I had taken over here, and I had just blank canvas. So I documented that process because I thought it was interesting. This was something the type of content that I personally enjoyed watching, and I felt like there was white space in there for me because there wasn't a lot of people with, I guess, my design sensibilities and how I would approach a project like this. And because my background is in design and education, I kind of approached it as such. So I made
Right.
this video, yeah,
Hmm.
and it just popped off. That video now is almost at 10 million views. Kind of ridiculous, but that really jump
Yeah.
started my channel.
No, I mean, all of those videos are so beautiful. I sometimes just listen to it as ASMR because it's just amazing. And I love how you capture not just what you do, but like the nuances of the things you're doing in the video, like the ambient sounds and everything. And it's really beautiful what you're doing for sure.
Thank you.
Talking about making all of these things, I'm sure it takes a lot of time, right? I would love to know how you plan your videos. Is there a script? Do you also write these small things down?
Yeah, so for my videos, there is extensive planning that goes behind it, but that's just because I personally like to stay organized. That's just how I operate. That's the thing that I value most. Whenever I enter in any project, I want to make sure that my mind is organized. There's a plan moving ahead so that I have something to follow. And at least from my experience, that more likely leads to success. I think that's probably from my background doing client service work where you have a clear deadline, you have a clear budget, and you have both a client to understand and a team to translate action to. So I've always been in that position where I had to have a plan to make sure things go all right, and then also be resourceful when things don't. So when I enter into any video, I always like to understand first, what is the point? What is the thing that I'm trying to convey? What is the theme, the subject, and what, by the end of watching this video that hasn't been made yet, what do I want the viewer to walk away with? So I always start with that, and then it starts building out into some kind of outline. So if this is the main point, what are the 3 to 5 things that might help build up that point, might help somebody understand it, and then what are the sub points from that that are novel and new and interesting. So what I found is there's a lot of people who make content online, and fortunately or unfortunately, they're just regurgitating the same things, and I do the same things too. But what I try to do to make sure my content stands out from others is after I kind of do my initial dump of my ideas of what I want to say, I look at it and assess, are there novel and new things in here? Is there something in my personal process that I learned that was unique, something that I didn't know before? And I try to highlight those things and kind of remove all the things that are either a given or has been said many times before. Just like at the beginning of this, you said, oh, you already know his background. And if you don't know it yet, you could look that up very easily, right? I kind of approach my content in the same way. I try to find the unique things that somebody else might find interesting. And that always starts with me. And
Right.
then I
So,
just go through the process of like editing and editing. Go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just saying, so that's your way of exploring things, right?
Yes.
Like exploring new gear, exploring new ways of shooting things. Is there anything that you have found like, oh, this has worked way better than before? And how do you actually approach your exploration? Sure, like whenever
Mm,
you're shooting your video, right, there are a lot of levels that you go through. And
hmm
sometimes you might be like, oh, like this, it can be like a gear stuff. Like this lens might work, but I might need a prime lens for this or this and that. So, do you feel that that level of improvement or experience has helped you grow your channel in a way?
I'm not sure I understand the sentiment, maybe because I don't think about it that way. I think
Mm-hmm.
because I've had a lot of training in again, from my experience in the past working on commercials and just being an amateur photographer and videographer, I know the tools. So I feel like I understand the fundamentals of how to build a sequence. What kind of shots do you put together in order to tell a story? And I think storytelling is foundation for all of those. So that's something that I've sharpened over the years, but I've had a lot of practice. I started editing videos back in 1999. So if you can imagine, it's been a long time since I've been practicing and doing this thing. Not to say I'm amazing at it, but I just have a lot of that experience looking back. So if I have a strong foundation at the base, that's where exploration comes in. Because I know what the rules are. Now I know how to utilize that and kind of step outside every so often to find something interesting and unique, right? The oblique angle that somebody's not looking at this either subject or visually like what's in frame from a different angle. So I try to infuse that wherever I can, where it makes sense. I think people also do this, but they don't know why they do this. I see a lot of content online unfortunately, where they just don't understand the fundamentals. So they try and throw a lot of wacky and weird stuff or trendy things in there because it's like, oh, this is an interesting camera lens or camera angle or unique effect. But they don't understand why they're even using it to begin with, which again is fine because I've been there before. I've done a lot of these things, I've made a lot of these mistakes, but because I've kind of explored that already, I kind of have that backlog of what works, why it doesn't work, why fundamentals are so important, and then when and why to use a particular effect or when to change things up.
Right. No, I think that question, yeah, I think that is much more applied to me because I'm going through that phase where I'm exploring everything when it comes to videography. I'm like at a
Hmm.
lower base. So, yeah, I understand because you have such a big portfolio like you have worked on for such a long time that you have been really good with your fundamentals now. Do you have any tips that you want to give to people who are, like me, just exploring stuff right now, and how we can maybe strengthen our fundamentals to get into it head on?
Yeah, so I think a good place to start is learning film fundamentals. So, how do you establish a scene? What are the differences between a wide shot, medium shot, and close up shot? Why would you move the camera, right? Thinking about the subjects of what you're trying to cover and then the composition of those things. Then you get into more of the aesthetics, like what's in frame after that. What do you see in the frame, and then where do your eyes go to? How do the relationship between those subjects relate? And then you just get more and more detailed from there. And a lot of that is exercise and practice. So that's all kind of fundamental stuff. And I think it's very important to learn those things. I think it's also important to practice writing, editing, shooting, writing, shooting, editing, rather, right, in that order,
Yeah.
and practice each of those, looking at ways to understand, like, okay, I wrote it this way for this video. How might I improve that on the next one? I shot it this way on this video. How might I improve that on the next one? And just finding one thing to improve every time you make an iteration, every time you have a go at it, right? And make sure to put it out there because when you put it out there, you get feedback and you get to
Mhm.
move on to the next thing. I think people get too focused on refining one thing over and over and over again, which I'm guilty of, but I know myself, I know my process. And again, I kind of know what works. But I think a lot of people, they try to make perfection the first time they go out, and it's just impossible. It's good to give an effort. It's good to refine things, but it's also better to just move on to the next thing because you'll learn so much more when you have a fresh palette. You have the experience from what you just did, and then you can apply that to something new, knowing that there's something to make better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a biggest example about that because I wanted to create my YouTube channel for such a long time. And for me, it's all experimental so that I at least get into this. I create videos,
Mhm.
I start editing it, I get to understand that side of the Adobe Creative Cloud, because I absolutely love editing videos, but I never got into it because I thought the video was never finished. I was too harsh
Mhm.
on myself, but now I'm just thinking about it as like my scrapbook or journaling. And, it's just me who is watching those videos and just posting it there for now. But the more I do it, I think I found out I'm getting better kind of at it,
Mhm.
understanding some angles, which is good, slow but steady, I think. Um, but yeah, I think that's right. We tend to concentrate more on perfection when perfection is just end of nothing, to be very honest.
Mhm. And just to share while I have this in my mind, in terms of resources, there's a great YouTube channel called Studio Binder, which I really love in terms of understanding film. So they've produced a lot of videos. A lot of their fundamentals are quite interesting, and it's film focused, but they will tell you about camera angles, when to move the camera, how to create a dialogue between your characters. And they cover pretty much every subject in the film, and they also help contextualize it. From kind of modern examples, like films that you do know. So they'll break it down. It's like, why in The Joker did they film it this way? Or how did they get this effect in this movie? And they'll kind of break things down. And it's very helpful to just have to learn these things. But I'll definitely start on the fundamentals. Another resource is Story by Robert McKee. I'll be honest, I never read that whole book, but I've had that recommended to me so many times. I've read all the cliff notes and kind of extracted the best parts that are interesting in there. And that's a very good book in terms of understanding how to structure story, which is why it's named that. So those are two things that I would recommend for your audience or for yourself to look into.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into it, and I will also put in links for it or somewhere on the screen about it so that people can go and check it out.
Hmm.
Another thing, because we are talking about how you plan your videos and the script, and you say it
Hmm.
takes a lot of time, and I'm sure it's the question is about creative productivity, right? Because productivity is a
Hmm.
completely different thing. But being
Hmm.
creatively productive, I find it sometimes a bit difficult for me because sometimes I don't have an idea for an illustration or a campaign that I'm working on, but I still want to be
Hmm.
productive because I want to complete that work maybe today or before the deadline that comes in. Is there
Hmm.
something that you have done that has worked and not worked for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to have constraints. If you don't have any constraints for what it is you're trying to create, that's where you get lost, right? So, first, understanding the point. What is the one point that I need to get across? And then building from there, how am I going to make that point? The ideas usually fall short or get lost when you don't understand what it is that you're making or what you would consider to be a success. So if I know my needs to be around 13 minutes, let's say, I need to hit 5 points and I need to convey um, a few novel things that I've learned in the process of documenting whatever I'm shooting. Like those are very clear guidelines for me. And then from there, it's just like, how do I do that the best way? So I think that's the best part is just to really have a clear set of constraints and guidelines for what you're doing. So if you're doing client work, it's the same thing. What is the goal of the client? And then what are the parameters that we need to work within? The tighter the box, the more interesting the solutions, I think. And so you have to set these same boundaries for yourself. I'm making a video. Let's make it a 5 minute video. Let's try and just keep it simple. What do I want to talk about? Maybe I want to talk about coffee, which I'm writing about right now. It's like, well, what about coffee? It's like, well, I want to talk about my setup inside my studio and then where I'm at in my coffee journey, some of the things that I've learned. Because I feel like there are other people like me who are in the same step where they're ready to go down the rabbit hole. But what are some of the novel things that I've learned that I found most interesting? What were the big questions in my mind that have been answered for me because I researched it? Let me answer that for others, right? And so just getting really really tight about those things and then infusing that into my work and then editing all the stuff that doesn't work, right? Refining it so that it flows and then making sure that I can show something interesting visually and say something at the same time, because those things don't have to always line up where it's a see and say, but maybe some things you could show and you don't have to say it anymore and vice versa, right? So just finding all those, just layering and then refining, editing down and trying to get things as tight as possible so that you're not saying so many words and still conveying it with the least amount of words and having the most impact.
Right. Yeah, because I think that's where I'm iffy about because when I feel like I want to work on something, I just write down the broad spectrum that I'm working on, which kind of
Hmm.
intimidates you in a way, right? Because, oh, like I have to
Hmm.
design this logo project rather than I think I should start doing it in a way that sketch out the ideas or perhaps, do some strategy work before and just, small steps or baby steps before. I think that might help a
Hmm.
bit. Most of the times, I usually write it down like a to do list. I have this
Hmm.
checkered to do list that I use, which is really great and it has helped me before. I don't know if it's going to
Hmm.
focus, but it's like a simple
Yeah.
thing I use. It's really
Mhm.
good. Is there something that has helped you, with keeping it in front? Because I know you write down things. I've seen it in your videos before. But are you a digital
Mhm.
person or are you a physical person when it comes to, getting your schedules down?
Mm. It's both. I think for long-term projects, I have to have that digitally, right? Like I have a project calendar for big things, especially when it comes to client stuff. For personal stuff, I just have a due date. It's like, okay, this is due 1 month from now. For daily stuff, I just have, same as you, just a to-do list
Mm,
that I try to
yeah.
focus on. And this is more of like a weekly to-do list. It's not necessarily like a daily thing. I might start it on a Monday, but it might keep continuing through the week because some of these projects or some of the tasks that need to be done take more than a day. Right. So, but I try to always have this in front of me on my desk. And I think the immediacy of having a to do list in front of you in a physical space is helpful for me because I won't forget it because it's always there. It's bugging me, it's nagging me all the time. Where in my digital tools, I have to go to that digital space, I have to navigate to the right section, and then I have to make sure to add something and check stuff off. So it's too buried
Yeah.
for me. It's why I don't prefer digital tools for at least task management. But for keeping track of big projects that have a lot of moving parts and things that are multi week, it's like I can't do that on a piece of paper. At least I don't prefer it that way.
Right. Yeah, I think same for me because digital things take too much effort. Um, I think Notion works because right now I have a Notion tab in front of me with all the questions. Notion has worked,
Hmm.
but I've found out like Trello is working really good for me because it's pretty quick,
Hmm.
Kanban kind of a board.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it. Is there any apps that you have used before that have worked really great for you?
Yeah, I think the two apps that get the most, or several apps that get the most use out of me. Number one is probably Notion. It's my database for everything. So I keep track of all of my projects there, life stuff like working out or just information, knowledge databases for things that, I'm collecting and saving, need to reference later. All of it lives in Notion. For idea generation, a lot of it is just sketching in sketchbooks, right? So I do a lot of initial sketching and ideation there first. Going back to apps, I think other productivity tools that have been helpful for me is like in terms of scheduling a lot of stuff. I have automated emails and automated scheduling. And when I say automated, meaning I just have templates so that if somebody responds to me in a certain way, I can send them a templated email back. If somebody needs my time, I just send them a Calendly link, right? So those things, it helps manage my schedule and helps offload all of the manual clerical work that normally I would have gotten bogged down by. And then one other tool that has been very fantastic for me is Miro. I've been using Miro a lot for remote collaboration. So I'm doing some consulting work. I'm working on projects where we just have this big digital board and then we can arrange it however we want. We can all jump on it at the same time. We can draw in there. We can paste links. We can paste images. We could write in there. I've been using this, and it's been helpful because previously, when I would do collaborations, it would be in the studio with a bunch of people huddled around a wall. We're pinning up stuff on a wall, writing stuff on a whiteboard. This is the same thing, but digitally. So I've been working remotely with GroveMade, for instance. They're out in Portland, which I'm designing a product with currently and about to launch. So it's been fantastic for the past 2 years. We've just been going back and forth on this digital whiteboard, and it's a fantastic tool.
Oh, interesting, because I've been using Millinote for quite a
Yes,
while. It's really good. What's the second one you said? What's the spelling of it? I should check it
Miro,
out.
Miro.
Why?
Millinode is
Okay.
very good. I've used
Yeah.
that extensively too in the past, and it both have their strengths and weaknesses. I think Millinode is also good for the same thing. The only difference that I found is with Miro, it's an infinite board, meaning if I grab the board and when I'm just starting, I can pan left, up, down, left, or right, and expands infinitely X and Y. Where Milanote, my only hang up with that is that it starts with the top left corner. So you can't pan up and you can't pan left. You have to build out from top to bottom, left to right. So that's like the major gripe that I have with Milanote. Like I really enjoy it. It's a fantastic product, and I've used it on many things in similar ways. But I just found, at least for what I needed it for this kind of digital whiteboard to just have expansive, unlimited space, and the fact that you can draw on it and all this stuff, like Miro has been fantastic for that.
Right. That's, yeah, I think I should check it out because I'm always finding new productivity tools online.
Hmm. Hmm.
Which is, I think, yeah, I think I've gotten another one. I should check it out for sure.
Yeah, Apple has their own too. Apple released their own with one of the latest OS updates. So they pretty much have the same thing. The only gripe that I have with that is in order to use like the zoom in and out tools, you have to use an iPad or trackpad. So that's the annoying part. It would have been
Which one
great,
did Apple
but
did?
um I don't recall. We could look it up after and we can just link that
Yeah, I
in
think
there.
so.
But yeah, it was kind of quietly launched. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but it works in a very similar fashion. It's just a board that you can
Mhm.
collaborate and you can do all the same things in there. So all of these tools are all similar. It's just a matter of preference, what you like, what you don't like, and what you're using it for.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I should even check out the Apple one. Just why not?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, productivity is a big topic, and because I have been using Notion for quite some time, it's not
Hmm.
like my primary thing because my primary is always like a notebook and a pen for sure. There's
Hmm.
another one that I've seen, like an what do you call it, an update in Notion. It's the AI that they have.
Hmm.
Coming on to another topic, the next topic, which is the AI, and a lot of people
Hmm.
have questions about it and around it, and they're worried about it. So about AI, first of all, have you used AI before in
Yes.
in your work? In your work,
Yes.
do you want to share how it went?
Yes, and I was on the fence too. A lot of people, I think, when there's something new, there's hesitation, and I'm the same
Mhm.
way. There's a certain level of hesitation until I understand it to a degree, so I know whether it's something that's right for me or it's not. And what really tipped it for me was actually a month ago. I went to Art Center to listen to Chris Do talk, my mentor, previous boss. You know Chris,
Yeah.
and he had a hot take on AI because he's all in on AI.